Hi, folks. This is Jason Pramas of the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism, and welcome to the 5th episode of BINJ Live. And today, our guest is Mary Randolph, who's right here next to me on screen, but far away in person. And Mary is a senior at Northwestern University. She was an intern with us actually this last summer and then the summer before that. And we now name her a BINJ reporter because she's written for us. So welcome, Mary.
Hi, happy to be here.
Great. So we're going to have, by the way, Chris Faraone, my partner in crime, so to speak, will be popping on at about 1:15, 15 minutes into this show. But as is usual, or has become usual, now that this is the 5th time we're doing this live stream, we usually ask our guests, to tell us about themselves and to not be shy, because we have a lot of interns. We've had a lot of interns over the last 8 years or so, both with BINJ and before that when we had Dig Boston, the commercial weekly newspaper we used to own. So over 300 in the last 8 years. So we don't necessarily get to know everybody really, really well. And this is one way to do it, right? All I really know about you, Mary, at this point at least, is that you go to school in Chicago, and you're finishing up this year with your undergrad degree. And is it in journalism?
Yes, it's in journalism, and then I also studied science and history. So
cool. So where are you from?
I'm from Boston, so that's how I found you guys. That's
right.
why I like writing about this stuff. I
Cool.
grew up in the city, worked at a local news outlet down on the Cape one summer in college, and
Nice.
I'm a big Boston fan.
Well, that's good to hear. I don't know if we are all the time these days, but,
Sure.
but generally speaking, yes, I am also from Boston, and Chris is from Queens, but we allow it because he knows more about Boston than most Bostonians, certainly in terms of history. But what interested you in journalism? Why did you want to be a journalism major, first of all? And did you want to do that when you started college, since you do go to a school known for its journalism program? Was that on purpose, or did you switch majors? What's the deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came into college as a journalism major. I started a newspaper at my elementary school back in 4th or 5th grade. It's
Nice.
always been for me just a thing of I wonder what those people over there are doing. I want to have a conversation with them. I want to talk to them. I want to hear their story and tell their story. And that has kind of just that urge and itch has never really left my side and has been a part of my life and something I'm thinking about since I was 10 years old, and came into college wanting to do that and haven't stopped. It's pretty cool.
All right. Well, we have that in common, although I didn't really start trying to do journalism till I was in junior high. So you were an early bloomer,
Sure.
even compared to me. What were you hoping to do as a journalist? Well, what are you hoping to do as a journalist? Once you become one, what's your aspiration?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like I've gotten a lot of opportunities to do lots of different types of journalism, which is super cool. I've really appreciated getting to do stuff across the board. So I have done a good amount of data journalism, which we'll talk about, and some kind of businessy reporting, some arts and culture reporting. I'm right now working as an intern for Smithsonian Magazine, which has been really cool. So doing kind of culture, science reporting, stuff like that. So I've gotten to do a lot of cool stuff across the board. I'm hoping I'll graduate in a little under a year, and I'm hoping to be doing some sort of reporting and writing. I think right now, anyone who's hoping to do that will take what they can get. I'd love to be doing something that I'm able to use that data work, because I think that's always really cool to have at a foundation of a story. But anything where I'm able to kind of be in a newsroom, be in that world, be reporting, be writing, I'd love to do. Eventually down the road, I love longer form stuff. And again, that leaves a lot of room to play with data, which I think is cool. Again, hard to get into, take what all can get.
Would you be, excuse me, would you be willing, I'm going to mute myself for a second,
Sure.
Just 1 second, sorry. It's one of the problems with being asthmatic, but is that sometimes one coughs loudly, which doesn't play well on video. But would you be willing to take a broadcast job? Heaven forbid, I know, but cotton candy explosion, news at 11. I mean, would you? Well, I don't want to insult broadcast too much, but would you?
I'm not sure. It definitely wouldn't be my first choice. I did do video when I was on the Cape. I was doing a mix of digital and video, and it was great to get that experience. I have a lot of respect for broadcast people. I think they are working in a different wheelhouse than what I know, and that's a whole different set of skills that I think is really impressive. It's not necessarily the things that I like to prioritize in my journalism or the things that like really excite me about journalism. So ideally no, but again, we'll see what happens.
I mean, what's journalism school like now? I mean, it's been 40 years since I first started as a journalism student. So like, back then I'm pretty clear on what we were taught, and we're not interviewing me though. So like, I assume, and you certainly heard this from me when I interviewed you, but like in this era, one must be a multimedia journalist. Certainly, right?
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think they do try to make sure that every journalism student at least has the tools to do it if it's asked of them, or the tools to explore it if they want to. So every journalism student at Northwestern has to take both a written reporting and writing class and a video reporting and writing class. And then after that, you have a lot of freedom to explore different options. So they do have like social media reporting, documentary making, they have audio reporting classes, and then they also have a lot of topic focused classes where you're able to explore, I want to do this project as a podcast, I want to do it as a data visualization, or I want to do it as a written article. So I think there is freedom in that, but they want to make sure that we're being exposed to a lot of different mediums because that's what's out in the world right now.
And do you find the department, has the, everything that you need right now? Like when you want to do, let's say, audio reporting, is there a professor on hand or somebody that can advise you in that all the time? Or have they had cuts, or what's the deal?
Yeah, so Northwestern has had some budgeting changes for sure under the past year and under the current administration. Professor-wise, there have been no changes in terms of that arena. And I do think being at Northwestern's journalism school, it's something I'm really grateful for. There is a big community, both of professors and of alums, who are really into Northwestern and want to help, and that's what they're there for. And so that's felt really nice to kind of have as a support system. And that hasn't felt like it's changed even under changes amidst the university. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's changing more at some state colleges already and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's certainly, as a former journalism professor, I feel like, there's a major kind of, and you may have heard me say this as well when we talked in the past, but a moral and ethical quandary, like, should we continue teaching journalism at least as a major? Because we've lost so very many jobs. It's got to be around 70% of, full-time jobs in journalism as journalists have been lost in the last 15, 20 years, and it's only going down. We're continuing to lose outlets. We're continuing to see cuts in big newsrooms, including big newsrooms in Chicago.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how much this gets discussed in a typical class. Are you hearing this, and are you hearing people tell you to like be a double major, do anything differently, go to a different kind of grad school?
Yeah, I think there is a lot. One, it's very popular at Northwestern to do a couple of different fields of study. That's kind of just like the way of the school. But I do think there's definitely a sense of either do something else just in case, or a lot of people will enter as a journalism major and graduate with a journalism degree, but end up going into oftentimes like law, consulting's really popular, stuff that you're using a lot of those same skills of knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to write about it, knowing how to communicate well from journalism school, but taking them into other fields. So I haven't heard much discussion about trying to get rid of the major or anything like that. If anything, like when I was working with the Illinois Local News Task Force, they were talking a lot about trying to get more people into journalism and study journalism and kind of create a pipeline into local news. But I do think there is a sense of students. Well, yeah, but I find that optimistic.
But it's,
Sure. There's a sense of students knowing this is a bit of a scary field to enter into. And so I think people who want to do journalism are knowing that they really need to love it and kind of know that they can't do anything else. And people who are less sure of that are definitely kind of pivoting or creating backup plans and stuff like that.
And I mean, are you hearing from people that are a year ahead of you or 2 years ahead of you that you may know, like how it's looking out there, how the Northwestern network, which is strong, certainly historically, is holding up for journalism grads? Like, have they walked into jobs or not?
I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone. I think it's a hard industry. That's not news to anyone. I think it's become pretty popular among people who want to do journalism to do another internship after their senior year, knowing that when they're done, they're then available to start working for the publication or the company, because they don't have the school to go back to. I think I have seen a good amount of people freelancing, doing stuff like that. I think the network does help a lot, but I think it is a hard thing and people are kind of figuring it out. It's also very common. Most publications offer fellowships or longer term internships rather than, or like rotational programs rather than here's a job and this is your job now. There's not a lot of permanence in terms of early career journalism. And that's something I think a lot of people are grappling with.
And what's the chatter around the department about this AI thing we're all hearing so much about?
Yeah, I mean, Northwestern has implemented AI policies. They differ a little bit by department. I think the journalism school knows that it needs to be accepted in some way, shape, or form, that people are going to be using it and it can't just be something that's ignored. There have been a number of kind of classes that have woven in AI. So, for example, I took a data journalism class in the spring, and that was something where we were told, hey, if there's something that you're running into a problem, especially with code or anything like that, use AI, be transparent about it. Tell me what you did. Tell me why you did it. And then there's also discussion of, like, they offered a class last year that was about implementing AI in newsrooms and what that could and should look like, which is an interesting discussion to have, a bit of a scary discussion to have, but
that's what I'm obviously angling at here. It's replacing jobs. So-called AI is already replacing jobs now in our industry. It started a while ago, actually, with sports reporting, that kind of stuff, right? Where it's like facts, facts, facts.
Right.
So, okay. So a stochastic parrot can handle that, right? Probably not very well, but it can and be used, and is cheaper than a person, at least in theory, which is a great concern. You've got publishers and the owners of broadcast outlets that want to save money, and make more profit.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it being taught to you as actual artificial intelligence or not?
Can you clarify what you mean?
I mean, generative, AI versus general AI. General AI would be like a machine consciousness capable of doing, in theory, and this is very much, just a hypothesis, like more than a human could do in terms of cognitive work, right? And if you plug that consciousness into robots and stuff, could literally replace humans and all kinds of other labor as well, right? As opposed to the AI we have now, most of the kinds of, what they're calling AI is generative and therefore is just large language models hooked to statistical models, right? So it's what these models are doing, certainly when it comes to working with words, right? Or, or math or whatever, they're predicting what many, many humans have said would be the next word in a sentence, would be the next, like part of an equation or whatever it is, right? There's no thinking going on. So that's the difference that I'm asking about.
So if it's being introduced to us as this generative AI or as this kind of possibility of
as our new robot overlords,
I think the mindset that I get from it, and I haven't worked with a ton of these scenarios, it's been a part of the curriculum, but not a huge part, is trying to make sure that it's being used as a tool with human oversight, and trying to kind of get ahead of whatever power may be developed within it, while we can, and trying to learn how to use it as a tool and what it can do, what needs to be done by humans to maintain this journalistic integrity. So I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with every use of it across newsrooms or across curriculums, but I think I can understand and respect this mindset of how can we make sure that kind of we're maintaining this control over what journalism is going to look like a little bit, and how it can be used as a tool and an asset rather than something we're scared of.
So, AI, go be a journalist, you'd say no, but AI, make a table out of this data I'm going to feed you, you would say yes.
Yeah. I think it's pretty situationally dependent. And hi.
Keep going.
Um,
Don't let me stop you. It's just formal.
I got to go at AI, Chris, so go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. I think it depends on the situation. I don't think I would ever say, okay, for everything, for this task, every time I do it, like every time I have to make a table for a story or analyze data for a story, I'm going to use AI. I think
Right.
there have been problems when I'm doing data analysis for a story, especially in that data journalism, although I think people use it outside of it as well. When I will ask, like, hey, I'm running into this coding problem. What do you like? Is there an error that you're seeing here? And that's something that professors have encouraged or said to do with kind of the proper precautions and stuff like that, which, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean,
go ahead, Chris.
Why not? No, why not? Listen, hello, by the way. But yeah, I think,
Hello, Chris.
obviously AI is not saving us too much time, or else I would have, had the extra 15 minutes today. But honestly, I think, there are things that for a while I've been using it for timelines,
Sure.
really just to compile, put a bunch of stuff, pull the dates,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely.
And then beyond that,
Yeah.
and sorry if I jump for a minute, I'm going to go on Wi-Fi, so I'm much better, so I come off better. But also, I mean,
We lost Chris. Chris, come back. Oh, wait, he's coming back. Sorry, folks. Any future folks that may be watching this.
yeah.
Hello again.
So, I mean, but I would say, what else did I just recently, one thing that's really good for is a lot of times, especially, I cover cannabis over at Talking Joints Memo also. And sometimes there's just something like, something happened, a court document that's really annoying to have to, most of the work is frankly copying and pasting out of it and then partitioning it. And, hey, help me, kind of break this down a little bit, and you're still writing. And I think this is all the more reason. I really hope that a little bit of sense of humor comes back now. If AI is doing some of that annoying lifting, hey, we have time to make a joke.
Right. Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
never know. And I don't remember if we talked about this when you were with us originally in 2024, but I believe it was that year that this national consortium of funders that, BINJ and many other groups around the country through our national group, the Alliance of Nonprofit News Outlets, has been wrangling with a national foundation consortium called Press Forward, has, been on the record saying they're trying to give out like at least, $500 million, to help like save news, one way or the other. And in its first year of operation last year, they gave $1 million, I believe, to Northwestern University for like some kind of AI stuff. And of course, from our perspective, it's like you could literally like fund a lot of news production at the local level with that same money. Why would you do that? Right. And why would Northwestern take it? So I don't know if you, and this has nothing to do with you, of course, but I don't know if you heard about that. It's one reason I ask about like what they're teaching you over there. Cause I'm like, gee, maybe they put more money into teaching this stuff, to Mary and all. Do you have are you aware of this thing at all? I don't think I'm hallucinating it.
I've heard a bit about it, not a ton. I believe that, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe that a good amount of that money went toward maybe AI kind of wrangling and thinking about it, but within our night lab and local
Right.
news initiative, which is doing, I think, some pretty cool work. But I understand kind of the frustration there because it's something that a lot of money is getting thrown out without a ton of kind of seeing what the benefits are, especially in the local space.
Is it additive work or is it replicating work that's already being done on the ground is, of course, always our question. Go ahead, Chris.
I just want to take the opportunity to give a shout out to Medill, Northwestern, for we currently have a grant from them for our opioid coverage through their data-driven reporting project, which it's awesome on a few levels. First of all, this is a topic that just needs to be covered, but it packaged in there has been what I think is most important is the actual training for some of these tools. And I don't have that much time. It's been great for someone to hold my hand and show me around the Google tools. That's who the partner has been. So, it's definitely helped with some of that reporting. I'm dealing with like hundreds of documents, and I've always for years been looking for ways to help parse those, help search those. It's not always even physically possible. So, so how to drop that in?
Yeah,
that's cool. And I guess we should shift gears now. Anyway, so Chris, we've learned, or I guess I relearned that Mary's from Boston or the Boston area. I didn't drill down, but and like
real Boston. To clarify,
Boston what?
Real Boston.
All right, cool. Another one. There's more of us out there in journalism.
Just kidding.
Yuck. So Hyde Park, anyway, which is definitely part of Boston. So cool. And we've learned, that senior at Northwestern, has done some cool internships, including an unspecified publication or outlet in Cape Cod and Smithsonian, recently, which is very interesting if that was this year, right? Because what's that like under the Trump 2 administration? Any restrictions,
actually, whatever? Right now, I'm with them this fall as a co-op type of thing that Northwestern does.
Wow. And I mean, they're based in DC, right? Or are they not?
Remote. They're based in DC, so it's all remote, which has been an interesting experience for sure.
Well, we'll be curious to hear whenever you can talk about that, probably in the future, whether you thought you were constrained in any way or not. I don't want to put you on the spot about that. It's probably too early anyway to tell. But, given what the Trump 2 administration is doing to Smithsonian itself, and indeed many museums, the magazine's not synonymous with the museum it's named after, but one wonders, if there's any pressure on them or whatever, at least. Because I think
I own hundreds of copies, by the way, for what it's worth.
Oh, wonderful.
Because he's mass magazine man, as seen on eBay and elsewhere, right? And sells lots of magazines
they're
and knows
they're unbelievable. Honestly, Smithsonian is one of those publications that, as a publisher in 2025, actually who's been doing this for quite some time, I look at it and I just don't understand how it was ever possible. The depth, the detail. Of course, a lot of it relies on, kind of like The Conversation, a contemporary site, on a lot of just work that's already being done and out there. Not to minimize anything, it's just and the diagrams and the images, and it's really It's like a lot of great magazines together. Smithsonian's got a little National Geographic, a little Popular Science, sometimes MIT, Technology Review. It's definitely one of my favorites.
I grew up reading it myself too. So my dad subscribed.
Very cool. It's been cool to be a part of. They do some really wonderful work.
What have you gotten to actually look at so far?
So the internship is kind of twofold. So part of it is doing something called Smart News. It's basically their aggregate breaking news about things from both the science world and then humanities. So arts, culture, history, travel, stuff like that. And then the other half is longer form features. So that's been really cool to kind of pitch stuff, dig into different issues, interview a lot of historians, scientists, people who really care about this stuff, and kind of try to find a news peg for stories that are kind of more typically evergreen. So I have my first couple of features coming out in the next couple of weeks and have published a number of those kind of aggregated breaking news, which have been fun as well.
That's awesome. Great exercise too.
Sorry.
So, and I mean,
I said it's a great exercise. That's just something that any journalist will learn a lot from.
It's been great.
And it's sort of, it's one of the quintessential American magazines that does long form work. And so, that we have some similarity with what we're doing. with the publication we've been calling Horizon Mass, and now we're about to delurk with a new binge focused name that we'll be announcing officially soon, because we haven't announced it yet, right, Chris? I don't think anywhere.
It's not so surprising. So I think people can don't worry about holding your hat. You'll all be just fine.
Well, it'll be called Binge News. So starting next month, we believe. Yeah, I know we have binge.news, so it's not really a surprise. Folks can see it right on their screen, sort of like there, where we have the QR tag. And I could even stick a logo up next to Mary if I wish, but we'll not do that because that would be rude. So you wrote a couple pieces for us, one September of 2024, but more recently, you wrote about the, you looked at advocates basically that are looking at the connection between tree cover in urban areas, in this case Boston, and income disparities between neighborhoods. So let me just put up, let's share this screen so the folks at home can see. This story is called Disparities Remain Across Boston's Access to Tree Cover, Green Space Data Shows. So Mary, tell us about this piece that you wrote for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this piece in a course at Northwestern, actually, that was data journalism. And so it was a lot about kind of sifting through data, finding data you think is interesting, finding data that might have a news peg. And obviously I was kind of drawn to Boston's data portal and have my roots there, so to speak, and was looking at a lot of their green space data because I had been kind of reading and interested in some studies about this sense of green space and its connection with public health and mental health and all of that stuff. And so there's some interesting science there. And I was interested kind of in the sense of whether there were disparities or inequality or inequity in this thing that is typical, like kind of just this, trees are around. We don't think that much about them, but can be this big asset in how we live and where we live. And so I ended up looking at public data that the city has around both the park trees and the trees on streets. And when I was looking at this data, I found this really wonderful organization called Speak for the Trees Boston, and they are doing a lot of work to improve the equity of tree coverage across the city. And they've done a good amount of data analysis as well, which has been really interesting. The analysis that I did was a little bit different in that it looked at individual trees per capita, whereas theirs looks at the tree coverage across neighborhoods. So a little bit different, but both kind of getting at similar points that certain neighborhoods, more affluent neighborhoods, have more trees and more tree coverage than less affluent neighborhoods throughout the city of Boston. And I also spoke with a professor of urban planning over in Utah, who is really interesting and has worked on studies about that connection between tree coverage and public health and green space and public health. And we spoke a little bit about kind of what that can mean and more generally work that's being done to improve the equity of green space in especially major cities, which sometimes is a city effort, sometimes is more of a grassroots effort, like in the case of Speak for the Trees, and is something that people are thinking about, but maybe not as much as they could be. So it was a really interesting thing to learn about, this really interesting intersection of obviously this kind of conservation data, green space data, a little bit of science, as well as urban planning and this kind of economic aspect as well.
So they're not suddenly going to make... Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, I mean, I have to, Jason, you know what happens when trees come up. I have to give my tree spiel. Sometimes it's the bike spiel, but when it comes to journalism, we like to tell, and you're beyond this, Mary. So, but the new reporters, we always say, anytime you think there are two sides to an issue, go find the tree people or go find the bike people. And so I want to put this in a question. For me, I think, trees are they're one of these things. I've actually done some reporting, not a lot, but a little reporting out west in Oregon, where major trees are everything. I mean, it's major part of the economy, but here trees are the ultimate literal NIMBY issue. Nobody gives a damn unless one gets cut down in their literal backyard or next to it. So my question, so what, there's so many things though. So what are what are the advocates? What's your sense of how, they bring other people into the fold, beyond the obvious environmentalists and maybe urban planners. The idea here is obviously to get a bigger audience. How do you do
Yeah.
that?
In terms of what the advocacy groups are doing, what Speak for the Trees is doing, or
Yeah, I mean, how do you grow something like this? No pun intended.
yeah. Yeah. So it was cool talking to them, and I wish I had gotten to do more reporting more broadly. But in the case of this organization specifically, they are going into neighborhoods, and a lot of their work is like literally like tree planting events in different
Mm.
neighborhoods. They work across social platforms. They work, I believe, with a couple of universities and colleges in the area to have younger people come into the fold, come in as interns. And yeah, they're literally like posting on message boards and Nextdoor and in coffee shops about events and having people from the communities come plant trees in their own communities, which I think is a cool way to kind of really show people what they're doing. I think one thing that they have struggled with that I spoke to the executive director about is that it's obviously not really a quick payoff. He was saying that, and I think people are about to hear the story, like they're thinking 50 years ahead or 20
Yeah,
years
yeah.
ahead. You're not going to be able to see, especially the environmental aspect. Tree cover is really helpful in cooling down the earth, obviously, and cooling down cities. And that impact in terms of that actual coverage is not going to hit until those trees are 20, 30 years old. And so I think that's something that they're struggling with in terms of really attracting people to it, because it's a sense of, hey, do this now and your kids will reap the benefits, and that's a great thing to pull people for. And it's an
Yeah.
important cause, but it's a little bit hard when there's not that instant
The tough sell, the 50-year payoff.
Well, they're
yeah,
also not
in the
solving.
age of immediate gratification.
yeah.
I mean, it would be nice if they could just solve poverty by planting more trees. Also, that's obviously not going to happen, right? So, what will happen is what you said. There'll be positive environmental knock-on effects. One hopes.
Yeah.
How significant they'll be as the Earth just keeps getting hotter. And Boston floods. I don't know. I mean, trees are burning, right? So
I do have a question. You bring up a good so I did have a question. So green space, I don't think they're necessarily usually canopy and green space, but I do have a question regarding Somerville, and I don't know if the statistic still holds. I don't think it was an old wives' tale. I'm pretty sure we reported, but Somerville, I believe, has the least green space. It's like the most paved city in America, perhaps per capita, something of this sort. And
it's up there, Chris. Yeah.
and it's so bad that when they put an extra turf field, it results in flooding, extraordinary flooding. So can you just talk about as much as you recall, just that difference, and also how in some of these real urban settings where there's not that much grass, how trees can be especially helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was something I didn't look at Somerville specifically because it was only looking at
Yeah.
Boston as a city. But it was interesting talking to the Speak for the Trees executive director and this professor of urban planning, because green space is actually less associated and data-wise less correlated with affluence in neighborhoods. And it's the actual trees, and especially the street trees and the trees in residential areas, that are really providing and really associated with affluence and are providing kind of that like way of life and those public health benefits as well, and that tree coverage that has those environmental benefits. So in terms of the way that they're looking forward and the way that this organization is looking forward, they're not thinking about, hey, we want to build a park. They're thinking
Right.
about, we want to put 10 trees on this city block, because that's really where they're seeing the benefits. And I know there was one thing, I believe it's in the story. The last quote of the story is kind of the proximity to people. So if they planted 50 trees in, the Boston Common, that's fine. But 10 trees that are actually next to people's houses, outside of people's houses, are going to really have a bigger impact in their perspective. And that's really what they're aiming for, which makes it a little bit easier in terms of space, but obviously still a challenge in and of itself.
I hate to bring anecdotal but for me, as in my years of reporting, I can just think of examples. There's one
Sure.
I'm going to mention that doesn't exactly fit what I'm saying, but when we think about affluent communities having more trees, I mean, I dare you to go cut down a random tree in Wellesley. You'll have, God knows what you'd have, Trump
Yeah.
Republicans banging down the door at City Hall, and along with everybody else. Meanwhile, I can't tell you. I can think of housing projects, Bunker Hill and the housing projects. 2 years
Yeah.
before they were going to knock the buildings down, they went in there and cut all the trees down. There's still people living there.
Yeah.
There's kids living there. The apartments were hotter. Apartments that were already hot. So I mean, how much of that is just like that basic? I hate to be that guy with the YouTube reasoning, but it just seems like that might be the case. Now, I want to say the one that doesn't quite fit it, although maybe a little, is a situation currently up at Alewife. I know you're probably not immediately familiar, but the
In
MBTA is
Cambridge,
one of the
Mass, folks.
Cambridge, Mass, and it's a pretty wealthy community, and certainly borders Belmont, which is. And they just went in
Well,
there, and it's always like a weekend. It's always like some convenient time, and just really interesting to see that. So what? How much of that comes up? I'm sure some environmentalists have more tact than I do. But what's the deal? Whose trees get cut down?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't hear as much about that, but one thing kind of on the flip side of that was interesting was the urban planning professor I spoke with. A lot of his work focuses on something called like green gentrification, where it's something if you are planting a lot of trees in a neighborhood, and if you do invest in planting a lot of trees in an area that is less affluent, then a lot of the time the housing prices will go up. If you're putting that investment in it, it often means there's other investments going into it. And that's oftentimes when a neighborhood or an area of a city will get gentrified. So I don't have a super concrete answer. It didn't come up at a ton of conversations whose trees are getting cut down. But in terms of planting trees on the other end, it can often have
Totally
not intended impact because it means that there's investment in that neighborhood and its original inhabitants who would have benefited from that tree coverage are getting pushed out.
like an outdoor subway tile of the remodeled apartment.
Right.
Chris has seen this, as have I, process in operation on Beacon Street on the border of Cambridge and Somerville, which was a working class neighborhood on the Somerville side until relatively recently. And I was hearing about stuff on tree cover and class status of neighborhoods like a long time ago, like 20 plus years ago, out of people I knew at MIT and stuff, right? And I've seen it in operation, and it doesn't line up like every time you plant a tree, that many more families get evicted. But it's as the neighborhood becomes more attractive, and one must factor in other things like, are more engineers moving into work in biotech in Cambridge? Harvard itself is growing at different times. Is that why there's more grabs for like houses, which then get converted? Whatever, but it does. You can watch it over just a few years in different neighborhoods. Right around Somerville, Medford. South of the city, west of the city, and in other cities, I'm sure. If you're around long enough, which is too bad because everybody should have nice trees, right? I mean, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an organization's thing too.
And well, I mean, what can I say? I don't know if you have any other questions on that, Chris. But we're, if you want to follow up on this piece, we're always happy to run more pieces about this kind of stuff as part of our longstanding commitment to environmental reporting, which we have not done nearly enough of since the pandemic knocked the wind out of our sails for some time. But now we're coming back, Chris, right? So more coverage every month. But I did notice, I told you this before the show too, that you've been working, I think, for the aforementioned local news initiative, which you'll have to explain a little bit more. I understand Knight Foundation funds it, but is it just a Northwestern thing? It seems like it is, but whatever. But you wrote a piece that colleagues of ours, other publishers, were talking about. In this case, specifically, people that are publishers that are members of the local independent online news publishers network that I'm a co-founder of, actually, and we're members of in BINJ. And they were saying, hey, here's this article. They didn't know who wrote it, right? But the Illinois Press Association, had a president who was who signed on to an initiative to do a class action lawsuit against the Trump administration for the treatment of journalists around coverage of ICE. Is that correct? And a lot of Chicagoland journalism outfits signed on, and the IPA signed on. Other people around the country were signing on, and then the IPA's board didn't want that to happen, and the president in question resigned over it. So I'll pull that up here. Give me one moment. Sorry, still got the old one up. Let's just switch. It's funny when you have to run your own show while being on it, right?
Sure.
So replace screen sharing. Here we go. And share.
Showbiz, man.
Showbiz. So here's the story. And I'm like, wait, our former intern, Mary Randolph, wrote this. And I told everyone because I was very proud. And I wish they were more excited than they were, but but there it is. Wow, how about that? So what's up with that, Mary? Yeah. You just wrote this.
Yeah, so this was a breaking story. I got the assignment from my editor over at Local News Initiative, which, you mentioned, it's kind of an umbrella based out of Northwestern. They do a number of different things. They do publish articles about the industry and specifically local news. They also publish the annual State of Local News report. They also fund a number of newsrooms, especially in Chicago, and do some data analytics work with newsrooms across Chicago to kind of work on those audience numbers and building that up. So it does a bunch of different stuff. Publishing these types of stories is one of them. So I got an email from my editor over there that, I don't know, late that morning, asking if I was around to write this story. He had gotten an email from Don Craven, who's the former president of the IPA, announcing his resignation, giving a bit of detail into what had happened. And I just kind of spent the day calling as many people as I possibly could. I talked to a couple of people who are in the, and I'm trying to remember, NAM, the newspaper Association of Managers. It's in the story, but
let's find it. Go ahead.
I tried to get in touch with a number of members of the board and wasn't able to get a comment from anyone there. I did get access to their statement that was released to their members, just kind of a broader announcement of the resignation.
There it is.
Yes, the Newspaper Association Managers, which is kind of the press association of all press associations in the country. So we spoke a little bit about kind of this broader issue. I spoke with a First Amendment lawyer. That was the basis of the lawsuit that the Chicago journalism or the Chicago news outlets filed. So trying to just kind of get a broader sense of what this lawsuit was and what this resignation means in the broader scheme of things. It's unfortunate that I kind of wasn't able to get that perspective into the decision from the board, but it was a really interesting story to write about, and obviously kind of a signal of these larger issues happening in the journalism world right now.
Have you been running into anyone doing any street reporting in Chicago, like in the course of your classes and stuff yet, or in field reporting yourself, or not?
Have I run into people doing street reporting, or have I done?
Yeah, either.
Yeah, we have a couple of assignments in our kind of intro journalism classes where we have to go out into Evanston, which is the suburb of Chicago that Northwestern's in, and talk to people, get quotes from people, stuff like that. I haven't been street interviewed, but I'm sure there are some out there.
Mary,
in Chicago.
Have you been covering stuff lately? Right. So
I was going to say, I'll put it like this. What are, because I know Jason and I are having difficulty with this. What are professors, what are mentors, what are publishers telling you about going to cover protests, about going to cover the National Guard, extremely dangerous situations? And I will say, Chicago is a city, and this is not hyperbole, that I still have post-traumatic stress from covering, in particular, the NATO gathering, which was 2013, I believe. It's just a brutal city of cops with broad shoulders, cops in full riot gear, sitting on horses that are also in full riot gear. Just a terrifying situation. Are they telling you watch your backs, don't go? What's the deal?
So it's unlikely, or it's very rare in my experience, that a professor will approve a student to do a story or pitch a story for class on a protest. I
Yeah.
have done a good amount of work with our campus publications to cover a protest for at least the Daily Northwestern, which is our newspaper on campus. You have to be protest trained by editors. And so that
Yeah,
entails
we
kind of
do
going
that. Yeah.
through that process of how to handle different situations, stuff like that. So yeah, it's not often that you'll cover a protest for class, and it's often not allowed, just because professors aren't always going to do that protest training, and students aren't always able to have that experience or perspective. For campus publications, they are covered, but there's definitely a lot of precautions that are taken. And I would say typically campus publications aren't covering protests in Chicago. It's often on campus protests or Evanston protests, which are,
Well, that sounds prudent, as it should be. So
Yeah. That's what we've done, and we've done some very significant protest coverage over the years.
Sure.
I mean, of course, for any young journalists watching who haven't done this before, just my major admonition would be, wear sneakers or whatever, like running shoes, because that's the first thing you should be doing if there's a really ugly situation. Don't try to like snap a photo for that Pulitzer. Make sure you don't get your ass beat down or worse.
Yeah.
And then reconnoiter, figure out what's going on, try to circle in, try to find what you need to find. But you want to be able to report another day, or you're not doing society much of a favor. Now, I mean, I guess there's not much else you could say about the Illinois Press Association situation. I mean, I would just say IPA, like, come on, what are you doing? Like, come on, like, seriously, like, why wouldn't you sign on to this lawsuit? Like, you want journalists being like, beat up or worse, jailed, tortured, whatever, by ICE. I don't know. That doesn't seem like something we should be getting behind.
yeah, and media solidarity is more critical than ever. I mean, even today, I saw Fox News even refused, along with every other major news outlet, to capitulate to the the Department of War's demands of
yes.
to not
Yes.
report any news outside that's not handed to them by the government. So and I think that's particularly strong. And no, I'm not giving Fox News a compliment. They're just doing what they should do.
I understand Secretary of War Hesgeth sent some kind of emoji response to journalists and press organizations today. So classy there, Secretary of War Hesgeth. Anything else you want to talk about, Mary? Like, you got anything coming up that folks should know about? Plans? Anything
Not too much. Definitely a weird time to be kind of looking for a job in 9 months, but also exciting. It's cool to be getting to do some reporting and writing this fall at the Smithsonian. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, well, we're very proud of you. Thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me. Talk to you guys.
Stay in touch, and we're going to now end this 5th edition of BINJ Live by all of us kind of freezing for several seconds because we don't want to be cut off in a strange way. So, bye, Mary. Yeah, Chris is already